everyone. A little technical difficulty there. For some reason, the show wouldn't start, so I had to kind of reset things, but thankfully it worked. Let's hope the recording comes through. Otherwise, we'll have to bring my guest back on again. We'll have to start all over. We'd hate to have to do that, put you through that. So hopefully everyone's having a good day. Oh, man, and I just gotta. My Facebook feed isn't loading for some reason. Oh, well, we'll just have to do without that. At least YouTube's loading, so. All right. Well, I'm going to bring my guests on. We're going to get started here and hope everything holds together tonight. But we have Terrance Niedziela. Zelia? I said I was going to. After all that happened, I'd probably mess it up. So.
Just a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, hi, Terrance. How you doing? Hopefully you're having a good day.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So we were talking beforehand before the show started, and we we're talking about where you're from. So give us a little bit about yourself, all the important things people need to know.
Cool. Well, I'm from the planet Krypton, and I crash landed in a field, and green rocks hurt me. Um, actually, my dad hit one of his nicknames for me was Clark Kent because if I shave my beard, tousle my hair with a little bit of gel, I look like the Christopher Reeve Superman with the sharp jawline and everything. So,
Yeah.
uh, but I'm very nerdy. I'm originally from Wisconsin. Grew up in north central Wisconsin. Um, And then 14 years ago, I moved to South Carolina because my beautiful wife was living here. We were long distance dating for 2.5 years. And when we got engaged, she was like, I'm not moving to the land of ice and snow. Because for some reason, 4, 5, 6 feet of snow and 30, 40, 50 below zero, which in wind chill factor, she didn't like that for some reason. So I moved here. And April of 2012, and then we got married in August of 2012. I am a middle school teacher. Uh, I am beginning my ninth year of teaching this upcoming Thursday. Can't believe my summer is already over. Um,
Early start.
and
Start in July, huh?
Oh yeah, and it's getting earlier and earlier. Uh, we have a modified year-round schedule, so we have
Hmm.
like some week-long breaks in between, but still, it's like, where did the summer go? Um, and I'm the oldest of six kids, uh, four boys, two girls, and yeah, so it's quite an interesting adventure.
So I saw on your website you like to watch cartoons. So what cartoons? What are your favorites that you enjoy watching? And do you watch those with
Well,
your kids?
actually, I don't have any children
Oh, I thought I saw you
currently,
had kids already.
so no, no. In fact, my students often ask me, Mr. Niedziela, do you have kids? I'm like, yeah, I got about 50, some of them. But the good thing is I get to send them home at the end of every day. And they kind of like,
Yeah.
Mwaha. I
Yeah.
have fur babies. My wife and I actually have three dogs. They're all rescues. And our current three are all foster fails. We actually had fostered them and they were going to move on, actually sent north. And for various reasons, we decided, nope, we're going to keep them. So we have our own little pack and they all love each other and everything. And then as we foster with the Humane Society and that kind of thing. My wife is very, very avid with that, and I help out some too. And so we'll bring dogs in, and they kind of get accepted into the pack usually, and until they move on to wherever they need to go. So
I love that. We've always been rescues, and I'm a big rescue dog, and you can find great dogs out there. And I know people like to get puppies and stuff, but I mean, you can sometimes find puppies. I like dogs that I've been through the puppy stage myself. I don't like to deal with this much, and all the other things that come with them. But they're great dogs, and they're very grateful to be given a home.
we we work a lot with dogs that have been treated very badly by humans,
Yeah.
and they come to us very terrified, and a lot of different things like that. So just like humans, I mean, we all have a past.
Hmm.
People have done us wrong and done us right and whatever. The same with animals. Um, and so we work with them to just love on them and, kind of work through some of the psychological wounds and different things that they're experiencing. Um, like our dog Davy came to us a few months ago. We were fostering him and we ended up deciding to adopt him, but he came, horrible backstory, just terrified. And he's come out of his shell, and our other two dogs have really helped him a lot with that. And he's come a long way in the months that he's been with us. But there's still some things where he'll cringe, or he'll run away, or respond in fear. I posted on my Facebook actually a picture of him this evening. He was right up next to the TV tray where I was eating my spaghetti, and he was all like staring at me, and he couldn't get like any up closer, and he like put his paws on my leg, and everything, like he begging for my linguine. And so but just like human beings, we all desire to be respected, to be loved, to be wanted, to be cared for, a lot connection, intimacy, a lot of those different types of things. But unfortunately, because of our past, we put up a lot of walls, and so we build these strongholds to keep people out, but we keep ourselves in too. I'm a perfect example of that. I grew up in a very rough family life, and God has brought me very far from where I was. So it's funny because when I interact with Davey, oftentimes, just this thought passes through my mind that in a lot of ways I'm like him. I've come a long way, but there are still some of those areas where I'm kind of,
Sure.
there's still some remnants of the wounds from the past and various things where I kind of cringe and, that kind of thing. But
Well, it's wonderful to see the progression the dog makes when it's in a good environment and gets past a lot of those. They're never going to get past all of them. I mean, just like us, we always are going to have those wounds, like you said. But it's great to see them to break out of those shells and when they're in the right environment too. I love that. So we've got so the cartoons. We had talked about the cartoons. So what cartoons
yes,
do you love?
so I am a child of the 80s and 90s. So when the good cartoons, so being a Gen Xer,
When they were hand drawn still, right? Yeah.
yes, exactly. And they were just starting to ease a little bit into the CG stuff and whatever. But like I'm a huge fan of like Superman the animated series, Batman the animated series. I remember the original X-Men cartoon, Iron Man and Hulk cartoons. I grew up on a lot of those, loved those. Though there is a cartoon that I absolutely love. It's called Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys. And it's basically an alien race that's like super obnoxiously advanced who is trying to stop this other guy from basically becoming a god and taking over, destroying the universe and remaking it his warped image and whatever. So what they do is they get these monkeys and apes from Earth, put them into this machine that gives them intelligence. And so Captain Simeon I think he's a chimpanzee who talks a lot like William Shatner. Captain Kirk is hilarious. But
is it actually William Shatner? Is Shatner
no, it's not. It's not. But I think what they were doing, because there's so many callbacks and allusions to all sorts of sci-fi stuff like Star Wars, Star Trek, and different things like that in the show. Aliens, the Alien movie, they have something with that. There's all sorts of. It's really hilarious. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I loved the cartoons where you had heroes who were heroes, not like nowadays where you have the so-called heroes that act more like a villain or an anti-hero than they do. The way they've rewritten a lot of the classic heroes, Superman, Batman, and others, and they're not even really a hero anymore. I don't even know what they are. It's this mess, and so like. King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, where you have this football team from our time transported back in time, and they become King Arthur and his knights and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's chivalry, honor, it's service, it's all those things that I absolutely love. And it's not like I was pre-programmed. Well, I was pre-programmed. God made me this way, but it wasn't like I was really in an environment that promoted those things to some degree. Even though I grew up in a very ultra religious type family, but it's that kind of stuff that I absolutely loved. I mean, I was a toddler, and my dad was tickling my mom on the couch, and my mom called out, "TJ, TJ, save me," because that was my nickname at the time. And I came over and started pummeling my dad with my fists, and my dad got mad. I was like, "What are you doing?" So again, a toddler. So it's not like I had been reading, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table or Ivanhoe or any of those other really awesome books or seen movies or shows. It was something that was in me. And so I've always loved that stuff. And so for the longest time, especially growing up, I thought I was a person outside of time. Like, why in the world was I born in 1979 growing up in north central backwoods Wisconsin when I would much rather have a sword than a gun, even though I can shoot and stuff because, I grew up in the backwoods, a horse than a car, a lot of those things. But I didn't realize that our world needed someone like me in this time period, especially as we see our world drifting less and less from those noble ideals and things of that sort. But
So you're talking about Star Wars and stuff. I don't know if you know this, but the Batman, the animated series, the Joker's voice is done by Mark Hamill in quite
yep,
a few of those. So a lot of people
yeah.
don't know that. He does a lot of voices, animated voices for a lot of things. But yeah,
And he was what's hilarious is the fact that most of the voices that he does, if I'm remembering correctly, are all villains.
yes.
So it's like he plays the ultimate hero in the Star Wars movies, and then
Mhm.
for everything else, he's like this evil guy. It's like, okay, wait a minute, what in the world? But yeah,
Don't
in
want to be
fact,
typecast too much, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie.
Mhm.
I've always loved that movie. That's amazing.
Yeah, Star Wars is always great. So, how long have you been writing? What kind of triggered you into wanting to write? And have you always written? And were you a big reader?
All right, so I was homeschooled till third grade, and when they tested me for placement in math and in English, they found that I had an eighth grade reading level. And so I could burn through a thick novel in a day without a problem. Um, but I've read tons. A lot of the reason why I read was as an escape and to hide from the abuse and various things that I was experiencing at home and school and whatever. Um, and so for me, it was my hiding place, my solace. So I've literally read like thousands and thousands of books in almost 47 years that I've been on this earth. Um, and so uh, like story is a huge part of me. I would make up stories for my siblings and then like change the story depending on whether or not they got the bored glazed over look in my siblings' eyes and things like that. But when I got to school in public school, we had these different writing projects and things where you had to, at least back in the 80s and 90s, where they had to track your writing ability. And so there would always be some kind of like writing sample to show, hey, they've improved, they haven't improved, or whatever. And then just various other assignments. So I remember in seventh grade was when I really set myself to write a book. It was fourth grade. Fourth grade is when I really set myself to write a book. And I wrote some of it, and my reading teacher had me read some of what I wrote in front of the class. And she was all super excited about it too, you know. Um, and then and I spent a lot of time just writing, for school and whatnot. I spent more time reading in elementary school, but by the time I got to seventh grade, I was ready to give up on life. I was dealing with a lot of stuff because of home environment and things. Give up on life, give up on writing, give up on a lot of things. And my seventh grade teacher, Miss Sapaitis, was so instrumental in my writing career because she pulled me aside and encouraged me in my writing. She saw that there was talent, and so, but that was the lifeline that I needed. And so now I'm a seventh grade teacher, basically doing the same thing that did for me. Um, but I remember years later, after I graduated from high school, I uh, I thanked her. I said, "Thank you so much." And she just kind of gave me this weird puzzled look, and she said, "I was just doing my job. You know, But to me, it was something far more important. And then into high school was when I really threw myself into writing and writing novels. And so um, I started a trilogy in high school. After I got out of high school, I finished the first book that I had started in school, and then I wrote the second book in the trilogy, and tiny, like a few sentences or whatever in the third, and then I set it aside because I had this overflow of just all these other ideas. So I literally have tons and tons of folders on my computer of all these ideas I've compiled over all these last couple decades or whatever, 2, 3 decades, whatever. Um, and just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. Um, and so it hasn't stopped. I found that for me, if I'm not creating, I'm like the guy in the Snickers commercial, like, Darth Vader standing there. It's like, dude, you need a Snickers because you're not feeling yourself, or Betty White or whatever, whichever one you can remember. But I'm very much that way. I have to be creating.
So I often ask this question, but I think you kind of answered it. You obviously found writing and even reading therapeutic for you.
Oh, definitely. Um, in fact, there's an author, Ted Decker. He says that one of my favorite quotes. He said that authors often write about what they're wrestling with, what they're dealing with. It's a way in which they work through different things. So, like, for example, he said that he gave the example of he was struggling with forgiving someone who had really done him wrong. And so he wrote one or two um, books that the theme had something to do with the importance of forgiveness, and forgiving people, letting that go uh, for yourself, and that kind of thing. And so definitely I do that too. Like there's different things that I'm working through. Um, in fact, one of my writing projects is a redemption story. It's actually in the Tales of Aris world. That's going to be coming out in a few years, hopefully. It's a redemption story where you have someone in the light who goes and falls hard in the darkness, and then working through the hopelessness and the depression and the suicidal desires and all those different kinds of things, and eventually coming to the light again. And that's basically like my story. Um, and so it's been really hard in some ways to write because I'm reflected a lot in that character, and so it's brought a lot of things up in me. But it's also been good too because I can work through that healing process, especially of just forgiving myself for my stupidity. Yeah.
Right. So did you always want to be a teacher? You talked about your teacher and how she influenced you. Was that something always in your mind, or did you kind of come to that later?
Um. Well, actually, ever since I was really super little, everyone was like, "You're going to be a pastor,"
Hmm.
and my dad especially really pushed that hard. He had his vision of what my life was supposed to be like, and a very strong personality type person. Um, and so I thought, hey, that's what I was supposed to do. So I was a part of this 2-year ministry training school. It was like an internship in a seminary put together at a church I was going to. And it was in the second year that I really felt God say, I want you to go to school to be a history professor. And at the time, very little self-esteem. I didn't see myself as being intelligent in any way, shape, or form. Um, you know, and so I actually went to one of my mentors, one of my father figures, who really has. He's one of the reasons why I'm at where I'm at. Like Bill, so spoken to my life in ways that I can't even put into the words. He's just amazing the way God used him. But I'm like, hey, I feel this is what God wants me to do, and he was like, duh, that's a no-brainer, because he could see it. He could see that, that gifting and that potential and everything. But I was so. Um, and so I'm like, okay. So one of the hardest things I did was to go to my dad and tell him, I'm not going to go into the ministry. I'm going to become a history professor. Yeah, he didn't like that. Um, my mom loved it. Now, my mom, she dropped out of school when she was in ninth grade. And so she told all 6 of us kids, I don't care if it kills you, you're going to graduate with a high school diploma. And all of us did. Even if it was just barely or whatever, all of us did. And then when I decided to go on to college, she was even more ecstatic. And with my writing career and everything, she would remind me on a regular basis over the years. Remember, I get the first copy of whatever you publish signed, and so I make sure she does. I make sure that she gets the first copy. She won't read it. She keeps telling me she's going to wait for the movie, but
Yeah, they might
uh,
screw up the movie though. They're never, usually
uh,
never as good as the book. Most of the time,
yeah.
every now and then
Hopefully,
they do pretty good. But
yeah. Hopefully, if any of my stuff does become a movie, they'll do it justice and
yeah,
that kind of thing. But who knows? We'll see what
yeah,
happens. Um, but and so that was kind of my. Now I was teaching children. I was doing youth ministry. I loved it. For some weird reason, like even in regular conversation, I slip into teacher mode without even thinking about it. So like I have the gifting and stuff. Um, but my senior year of college, I made some very, very bad destructive decisions that kind of changed my course in some ways. And then when I moved to South Carolina, just working regular jobs and stuff, and my mother-in-law, who is a retired teacher, who works with special needs kids with physical education and stuff, she's like, "Why don't you go for your master's? Why don't you go for your master's? Why don't you go for your master's?" Uh, she's an awesome mother-in-law, um, but sometimes she's like a dog with a frisbee. Um, and so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do my master's. And so I was looking at master's degree programs for history, and there was nothing around here, nothing that would hit that niche of ancient Middle East history, which is what I went into for my bachelor's degree. And so I just thought, you know what, I'll do English and writing. And so that's what I did. And um, partway into my program, I was just praying, God, what in the world am I supposed to do with this and all this kind of stuff? And the thought that was very strong that passed through my mind, that was not me, was it's on a need to know basis and you don't need to know. And I was like, okay, yes, Lord. Apparently I just need to focus on my studies and you'll let me know when the time comes. And he did. Towards the end, he's like, okay, now I want you to go ahead and apply to the school district that I live in, and ended up as a middle school teacher. And so I've been doing that. Like I said, I'm going into my 9th year teaching 7th grade.
yeah, that's amazing that you got to that point through everything you went through. It's a good biography, maybe someday to write about your life. Huh? So we've got your book. So let's talk about your book. So you mentioned about you had written when you were for your siblings, it sounded like, or maybe you just told the story. I don't know, were they written down or were they just things that you were telling them and
When I was younger, yeah, it was just verbal. It
verbal
was
stuff?
just verbal stories, that kind
So
of
none of
thing.
that was ever
But
written down then.
no,
Yeah. So
no.
what was the first thing that you think you really wrote that was that first real thing that you said, I think I can be an author?
Um, I think it would have to be the fantasy novel that I started before that trilogy. Um, because I really like I was consumed with that story. Like I was so fully submerged in that world and everything. And so during my lunch period, study halls and stuff, I would go into the computer lab in my high school and I would just type at these old school IBM, computers or the Mac computers or whatever Apple, whatever it was at the
PC
time that we
Junior.
had. Yeah. Um, and I wrote, in fact, I had it on one of those hard, the 3 by,
Three and a
a
half inch
three
disc.
inch floppy disk, and
Hmm.
I wrote like 100 pages. I had like 100 pages with a little bit on 101 or whatever it was, but I had a good amount, double spaced, and all that kind of stuff. And then the disk got a virus, and
Oh,
all I could do was access it to print it, and so. Being my less than intelligent self, I didn't actually ask the computer teacher if it would be okay for me to print it. I just went and did it. Yeah, he was not happy with me. Uh, but I think that
dot,
was
make,
that was the
dot matrix printer, probably a long feed type paper, or was how? What?
actually no, it was a regular type printer. I mean, it was the big boxy ones,
Yeah.
you know, but it printed on both sides. So like it
Yeah. Okay.
um so it was, but I've used those too. I've used the dot matrix printers,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and the extremely pixelated IBM, you know,
Yes.
screens, computers and all that kind of stuff back in the late '80s, early '90s.
So do you still have that printed copy somewhere?
Oh no, no! In a fit of stupidity, I threw it away.
Ah,
Um, but the good thing is the majority of that story I still remember.
okay.
Like my brain is such that story, for whatever reason, like gets locked in. So like we'll watch a movie, my wife and I will watch a movie, and it could be multiple years later. I can still remember it and like spit things out or whatever, or a book I've read, I could spit things out. And she's like, I don't remember that at all, you know. Um, and so I've actually worked on compiling some things to maybe rewrite that. And so who knows? It may come out, it may not. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you maybe one day you might sit down and try to write it again and bring it back to life. So, but obviously you've got more important projects you've been working on now. So tell us about what your this trilogy I think you were talking about. I'm assuming that's the one you sent me some covers for, at least one of
Yeah.
them.
So the Fire and Lightning trilogy begins with the book Becoming Fire and Lightning, and so it takes place in the fifth age of Aris, the country that I've created, um, and uh, it's a scholar, actually a 27-year-old guy from our world, and his 17-year-old sister are transported to another world by Amai, who is the Lord of Light and Life. And so he gives them the call. And so for Michael, it's to become an Elesh, one of his flaming knights. So he's his armor, his wings, and everything, his swords and weapons, it's all made out of blue fire. And Cassandra is chosen to be the speaker of reconciliation. So there are 7 individual races in Aris, and for the most part, all of them hate each other for various reasons over the last 80,000 years of this country's existence. Um, and so her job is to unify the races because the 7-headed dragon Barel, his legion, is pouring into the country in this blitzkrieg to completely annihilate. Um, and he's been trying for 80,000 years to capture and conquer this country, and he's failed every time. But now he actually has a possibility of doing it because the races are so fractured, and all of that kind of stuff. So um, so a lot of it is them facing overwhelming odds and realizing that they can't do it on their own. The white tiger on the cover there, that's Captain Ragnar. His story actually is the story about redemption that I was talking about earlier. And then Lady Akima, she is a dragon that breathes ice. She is Cassandra's teacher. Ragnar is Michael's. And so that's the first book. And then between each of the books in the trilogy is going to be a standalone, which is part of the Tales of Aris Origins series. And so they keep hearing about this guy named Miklos, who is this hero that did amazing, awesome things in the Fourth Age. And then he disappeared, and they don't know what happened to him or whatever. And Michael is like, I'd love to meet this guy. Well, at the end of the book, brief spoiler, he does actually end up meeting him. And he sits down with Miklos, and Miklos tells him his story. So the last 2 sentences of Becoming Fire and Lightning are the first 2 sentences in the book, The Saga of Miklos. And so in between each of those books is going to be a standalone. So after book 2 of the Fire and Lightning series will be Ragnar's The Quest of the Immortal, and then there's going to be the 3rd book in the trilogy, and then probably Lady Akima's story, and so on. But because I created this gigantic, deep world with all of these races with complex cultures and traditions and histories and everything else like that, I have enough material that I could write into eternity and never run out. I was briefly, I went for a walk with my wife, and she was listening to her YouTube playlist, and the song was playing, and I got some ideas for the second book to put in my second book in the trilogy. And so I told her about it, and she's like, "Well, did you write it down? Because you're going to ask me later, and I'm going to have no clue what that you said." So, and I was like, "Okay, now you know that if I do that, I'm going to get slower, and you're going to be like way ahead of me and everything." And so I went and I did that, and I was writing that. And as I wrote those notes into my phone and like dictated and stuff like that into my phone, it got bigger and it got deeper and expanded and expanded and expanded and expanded, so that I spent roughly about maybe 2 hours brainstorming and writing stuff down. And then I was doing math calculations for different things, populations and different things, like percentages and whatever. And I'm not a math guy. I'm an English and history guy. So for me to sit down and do math, it's got to be something writing related or history related or whatever. So, and I stopped. I'm like, wait a minute. I've sat for a good hour or so doing math. This is weird. You know, but in doing that, I got more material, not only for the second book, but for additional books or anthologies that I could put together. All these other adventures and things that are going on and everything, and academies and for the LS and everything. And just like, and it just, again, it snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. And I kind of had to rein my brain in, I was like, okay, I need to focus on some other things. Otherwise I could sit for hours and just all hour.
Seems like you would have a large flow chart or something to keep track of all this stuff. Do you have a big notebook that you write all this stuff in, or it's all on your phone?
Well, it's on my computer, on my
Yeah.
phone. I use Scrivener.
Sure.
And so that writing program, I have stuff in tabs. And so I have a lot of stuff with that. I wrote on a timeline. In fact, at the back of Becoming Fire and Lightning is the timeline for RS. And so in each of my books, there's going to be a timeline, because they're going to be set in different ages, different time periods, things like that. Even in the back of the book, and in my computer program, I have glossaries that here's all the funky names, here's how to pronounce it, here's what that person is, or that creature, or land, or race, or whatever. But yeah, I have Excel spreadsheets. This race is here, and they bleed this color blood, and all those different kinds of things. To keep it all straight.
So right now you're figuring at least 5 books. Is that what I'm understanding?
At least
Trilogy
20.
and then the 2 in between.
At least 20.
20
Like
books.
Oh yeah, at least 20.
And how much have you written so far? Complete.
Well, I have
the first one.
the first one, of course, which is now completed.
Yep.
I have in the Saga of Miklos, I have 30,000 words written, and I'm working through that one. Because I'm hoping to release that one early next year. Quest of the Immortal, I have 50,000 words written, and I'm aiming for about 75 to 80,000. And then the other 2 books in the trilogy, I really don't have much written, other than a few little things, and then my brainstorm. But I do have some other stuff for anthologies, short stories, novellas, things like that I've written stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a short story that I send out to anyone who signs up for my newsletter about an LS named Zippel, and he's from, I think, the Third Age, and I reference him and what he did in Becoming Fire and Lightning. So like everything that happens in the past is referenced and linked in some way in the current books that I'm putting out. So like because when I studied history, I really had a better understanding of how interconnected everything is. No events happen in a vacuum. There's always a reason behind why people are doing what they're doing, and even us. When we look back and we look at decisions that were made, decisions other people made, and how everything comes together, all of it affected us in a way that we are the product of our environment and the decisions of ourselves and others. And so I really play on that a lot with my writing. Um, and so yeah, it's all linked together in some way.
So, book one, do you feel like this is a series that needs to be read in order to
Well, I
know
mean, the
where to
trilogy
go?
itself, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, if, and I would say in a way, yes, it would. Like, you need to read, well, you definitely need to read the Saga of Miklos after becoming Fire and Lightning. Simply because, like I said, the book ends with the
Right.
first two sentences of Saga of Miklos,
Sure.
and then the second book just picks up where the epilogue of Saga and Miklos left off. So you kind of, with that, you kind of have to. Um, there are going to be some other things that, um, the Quest of the Immortal probably you don't need to read. You could jump right into the third book. I don't know. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to do that. But there are going to be some series where, yes, you're going to want to read them in order. Others where you could just pick up a book and read it. Like you could take some of them and you could just read it and you'd be perfectly fine. So that part of it I haven't really thought out yet. But we'll see how it goes as it goes.
So you sent me another, I don't know if it was a book cover or a promo thing, TOA Origins. What was that about?
Yeah, that's the title of my next book coming out.
Okay, so
So
that's the next one.
the Origins series is basically the back history of other characters like from the trilogy and that are mentioned and things like that. Um, and so Miklos is this guy that Michael meets. So the Saga of Miklos. So Miklos is another one of those scholar type guys. Um, Not all of the main characters are going to be scholars, but I have found that majority of the stories, movies, things out there, the main character is not a scholar. He's somebody else. He's a soldier. He's a dweeby kid that gets bullied all the time or whatever. And so I'm like, I want to write some stories where the main character is a scholar.
Hmm.
But this is the next book, so that's the title of it. And my publisher and I are working on some concepts and things for what the cover is going to look like.
Hmm.
So people can stay tuned, uh, keep up with that, and we'll see how that all comes out.
So it sounds like you're more traditionally published. You're not self-published. So you've got a
Right.
publisher for your books,
Mhm.
okay?
Yep.
And that's worked out well for you. Sometimes
Yes.
dealing with a publisher can be a challenge, but yeah.
Well, I have the privilege of having my writing mentor be my publisher.
Oh,
So Dr. Catherine Hutchison Hayes, who is my writing mom, uh,
yes. I know
she's
Catherine
like
well.
this.
Yeah,
She's awesome. I saw you had the Killer Nashville, and she's all about Killer Nashville.
yeah.
The
I've
T-shirt.
been on her show before too. So yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's
Yes.
amazing. And so when she started her publishing company, um, I was actually hoping to get published by somebody else. And all those doors closed on me and everything. And so I was kind of like despairing, okay, what in the world am I going to do? Do I just keep holding out for this or whatever? And she, of her own free will, without any conversation or anything, um, before our critique group, because I'm also a part of the critique group that she runs, she's like, have you ever thought about signing with me? And then she goes in to talk about how on her own she's been brainstorming uh, how she'd publish the book, how she'd promote it, various merchandise ideas, getting me to create a game that's set in this world, which of course I had also been brainstorming for a while. And I was just really floored by it. And like, well, let me pray about it. And I quickly got an answer of yes. And so at the end of October last year is when I signed with her, and I love it. She's awesome. She's a awesome lady. She's great to work with, um, and that kind of thing. And I love working with her.
I'm amazed the energy she has. She's very positive, but a lot of energy,
Oh
and
yeah,
she's a very good speaker as well. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, she and I chat at Killer Nashville usually every year. Well, I'm only going to be at the award ceremony this year, but hopefully I'll get to see it there if she makes it and stuff. So it kind of sounds to me like I always ask pantser or plotter. It almost sounds like you're more of a plotter, but maybe not. I don't know. What do you think?
I am a plantser.
So
I
you hang
plot
in
some and
between.
then I go by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
Um, there are different things that I do plot out. But like for me, my writing style, the first thing I do is I pray. Holy Spirit, please write through me, because I want to glorify God. And if I'm not glorifying Him, it's a waste of my time writing it, a waste of your time reading it. And that's the way I view writing, because for me, it's a type of ministry. And so after I pray, then I just start working through some ideas, planning some things out, um, and then I just start writing. And what I found is I'll write and I'll just start writing and writing and writing and writing, and it's just all flowing and flowing. And then I'll stop and I'll read what I wrote, and I'm like, holy snap, that is good. Like, that is mind blowingly good. And that did not come from me. Thank you, Lord. You know, um, and I've tried to do it on my own without listening to the Holy Spirit in prayer, and it's a mess. It's horrible. But I do a little bit of both, um, and it's working.
Yeah, I mean, the stories you sound like they're very complicated, keeping track of all the characters and everything. I'm certain you use Scrivenger to help you with that as well. You have your timelines, but I'm sure you've used the character sketches pieces, and I have Scrivenger as well, and keep track of all your characters, the names, everything else.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. So you sound like you've got a lot of stuff in notebooks and on your computer and everything else. So you have some other stories that you, beyond these series that we've talked about, is there some other ideas, other stories, maybe in different genres that you're thinking about working
Yes.
on?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I have a science fiction series called Noble Mercenary, and it's a mercenary series, um, science fiction, and um, and so it's a nobleman who's because of various things gets betrayed by his family, and he's handed over to the enemy that his empire has that he lives in has been fighting against for years, and so he's basically betrayed and handed over to them. And the first book in that series is called Ship of Vengeance, and so him and his team have to survive all of the various warriors and people on that ship, challenging them to duels, um, and that kind of thing. But their mascot is my dog Tig. Like, I have this small dog. He's shorter, medium sized dog, black and brown and white and stuff, and terrier mix. And uh, their mascot, my main character's dog, is my dog. Um, and uh, and he's a lot of fun. His name is Thaddeus Wigglebottom Esquire, um, and because the tail is always moving and high energy, just like my dog. You know, but yeah, so I have some science fiction stuff. I have some more fantasy stuff. Uh, Lots of different ideas. Historical fiction. Um, there's lots of different stuff, but I don't know. Like right now, like I would love to dive into some of those other things. Like I said, I have all these folders with all these ideas and everything, and I don't know if I'll get to them all. I definitely would love to hammer out that Noble Mercenary series, because I have a lot. I play, like when I write when I work on those stories, I play. Like, I have a lot of fun with it.
Mm.
Not that I don't have fun with the Tales of Aura stuff too, but it's on a different level. Um, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, it's tough, teacher, that's a busy job, takes a lot of hours. I mean, finding the time to write, I'm sure, can be challenging.
Oh, definitely. In fact, there are a lot of times I get home and I don't want to write it. I don't
Yeah.
want to do anything but like sit and veg in front of the television or whatever. But I do have, some various people that are like, come on, dude, you need to write. Remember, you got these deadlines, you have these things. Um, Sometimes while I'm walking my dogs, I'll have my phone and I'll just dictate into my phone when it cooperates and actually decides to type what I'm saying. You
Mhm.
know, um, I would love for there to be dictation software out there that when I speak, it actually says what I say and doesn't glitch and whatever else. And
Yeah.
uh, but uh, and then I get all mad and want to throw my phone because, like, dude, just write what I say. Uh, writing notes, different things like that. But there have been a lot of times I can't tell you the number of times that I woke up and my mind was on like creative overload, hyper imaginative awesomeness. And then I remember that I have to go and teach, and I'm like, snap. Because I'm like, I would love to just sit down, write. I'm in this creative mode. It's awesome, and then I'm stuck in a classroom for 8 hours or more, and whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, great.
Well,
But
it's
during some,
important work too. It's just tough. Obviously, you want to write, but yeah, like you said, it's kind of one of those things. It's like I'm kind of doing that all day at school. Reading and writing and helping students. So,
dealing with behaviors and
yeah.
parents who don't believe that their child is a lovely angel of what, and uh, that kind of thing. So yeah.
So we're at about 45 minutes. So I usually try to wrap things. We got a little bit of a late start, but we're at 6:50 right now, my time. So I want to get down to the last few questions. So I always ask this of all my guests. Name of the show is Bringing Life to Characters. So what is it you do to bring those characters? And you got a lot of characters, I'm sure, in your books. Usually and I don't know if do you classify your Becoming Fire book? Do you consider it a fantasy? Do you consider it
Yeah.
in that realm? Okay, so usually
Yeah.
the fantasy, different worlds, like you said, races and everything. I mean, there's a lot of complex stuff. So what do you do to get those characters to jump off the page that people want to read about them and love them and sometimes hate them?
Um. Well, some of the things that I do is just like all right. So I have some reference books, and I have one that's the positive character trait thesaurus and the negative character trait thesaurus. I don't know if you've heard of those, but I use those, and then they also have one that are like for different setting things and stuff. But the two ladies that put those together did an amazing job. So having character traits, you know, um, one of the things I teach my students is you have direct characterization, indirect characterization. Direct characterization is Bob is a slob. Indirect characterization is his room looked like a hurricane had a field day, blew everything apart. Uh, and so in that second description, indirectly we're learning, okay, this guy's a slob. So what we say, what we do, how we think, how we dress, how we how we carry ourselves, our effect on other people, all of those types of things are indirect characterization, and they reveal a lot about us. You have someone walk in the room, and right away you can learn a lot about them. And so really focusing on that, making sure that there's consistency. um, if I have a character that I want to be standoffish or whatever, I need to make sure that that carries through, you know. And so reading through, and that's where my critique group really comes in. They're great about that. It's like, well, what about this? It's like, wait a minute, you said he was blah 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 here, but now you have him blah 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 here. So what happened? Where's the difference? Different things like that. Um, and and so that's a lot of what I do is I want to add as much depth as I can. Really formulate what is their backstory, what is their history, how does their history affect their present, um, and then I salt and pepper the backstory throughout. Like I don't do the information dump like a lot of the classic literature used to do, but I scatter it through. And so as the readers are learning more about these characters and hinting at different things, like Michael, he's got burn scars, he's got knife scars on his body, but I don't come out and say right away what it was that happened until a little bit later on. And then we learn more about his character uh, and the type of person he is as it develops, you know, because there's the saying, you really don't get to know somebody until the heat is on. When the pressure is on someone, then you really get to know a person's heart. What comes out of their mouth. Because a person who's filled with hate, hate's going to come out of their mouth. It's going to guide their actions. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. As a person believes in the heart, that's the way they are. And so, putting them in those situations where the pressure is going to be on them, and then watch them fail. And then what do they do when they fail? Because us failing is not as important as what we do after we fail. And so really adding those kind of elements to it really makes them come alive.
So, other than your dog, have you based any characters on real life people that you knew or borrowed characteristics from them?
Oh yes, very much so. Um, very much so. Um, Captain Ragnar has a lot of the different characteristics of men that were mentors to me, who were fathers to me. Lady Akima, her wisdom and stuff, some of the mother figures that I've had. Um, there's all sorts of different characteristics and things. And I've had my students ask me, if I put them in my novel, and I was like, mwahaha.
So, what do you do? What advice do you give to aspiring authors? And have you ever had some students come up to you and go, "I want to be an author just like you, Teach"?
Oh yes. In fact, one of my I come alive the most when I'm teaching writing. Um, and I'm the staff leader, whatever, faculty leader for the creative writing club at the middle school. And I've had some kids actually say, I want to be an author when I grow up. Um, I would say the first thing is read. Um, if we're buried in our phone, doom scrolling TikTok, being on social media, stuff like that, that is not going to help your writing. Okay. You need to actually be reading books, whether it's on Kindle or an actual physical paper, a physical book. In fact, in a lot of ways, having a physical book helps you to engage with it better than looking at a screen. And I know I'm an old guy saying that because back in the day we didn't have you didn't have the technology. But really, seriously, having a physical book helps. Plus, you never run out of batteries, and if you hit somebody with it, it doesn't break the screen. But um, the more you read, the more you're going to learn what works and what doesn't. Okay, and you're going to learn how to structure sentences, how to bring characters to life, and all those types of things. I mean, there are certain authors that have really hardcore inspired me. In a way, they're my teachers. But there's lots and lots of them. Read, read. Uh, Read books in different genres. You have your favorite genre, that's good, but read books in other genres too. Like I love science fiction and fantasy, but I've also read historical fiction. I've read Louis L'Amour's westerns. I love L'Amour. He's an amazing storyteller. Um, some thrillers, various other things. Even dabbled a little bit reading some romance stuff, which yeah, I'll leave that alone. But um, having those stories helps us to grow our imagination. And the more you grow your imagination, the better you're going to be at problem solving, the better you're going to be at coming up, solutions, and just being overall creative. So watching a television or streaming or things like that, yeah, you're going to get a few ideas here and there, but really reading is going to be the best. But also read books about writing, um, and find those books that are about writing fiction, or if you're poetry, or if you love writing screenplay or whatever it is. There's some amazing resources out there. Um, Look those up and read those. Uh, for those who are younger, who are still in school, talk to your teachers, talk to your professors, you know, and especially your English ones, or those who are writing teachers or whatever. Um, and also join a critique group. Have people who are in different levels of writing maturity and read each other's stuff. Like the critique group that I'm a part of, Word Weavers, once a month, we give each other 1,500 words, and right there in the group, we read it, and then we go around and we tell each other feedback. We start with, what's one good thing that you liked? One or two things. And what is something you can do to make the draft better? And we even will use that wording as, one thing you can do to make this draft better is, and then we end with another positive note. Because if we end on the negative, that's all we're going to remember is the negative. Oh, this sucked. It was horrible. Blah, burn it. No, we need those positive things too, because not everything is bad. Okay, it may be the worst draft you have ever written in your life, but there's still going to be some good things about it. So remember that. Last piece of advice: don't throw anything away. Okay, please don't be like me and write 100 pages and throw it out. Right. Whether it's your poetry, different things like that, keep those things somewhere safe, because you never know. You can go back and you can draw from it, or you can polish it up, or whatever. So that's what I got.
I have a fire safe full of stuff that I did. It's still printed on an old dot matrix type printer. Some of my poetry I wrote 3 novels in the 80s, which never saw the light of day. Yeah. I still have all that stuff, and it got moved. A lot of it got moved to digital, so I have it on digital. But I like having the paper copies still stored away. I think it's great to have.
Do you have the clay and stone tablets that you worked on too? The vellum scrolls? Did you keep those in there too? Or?
I'm not that old. I don't think. I hope not. Maybe I've come back and been reincarnated a few times. Who knows? Maybe. Huh? So we got any marketing.
This is where you just say, hey, I make 20,000 years look good. What can I say?
That's right.
Like Yoda, when 900 years old, you look this good. I think not.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what about marketing tips? You have any marketing tips to try to get the word out about your book for those aspiring authors out there?
Yes. And I'll tell you from personal experience of not doing it well, and some things that I have done well. Posting regularly on your social media is really important. 3-4 times a week is a good idea, and that's something that I'm trying to get back into doing, and really, because once it's published, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a bestseller. You have to market it, and your publisher is not going to do all the marketing for you. And if you indie it, then it's all on you. And so, doing that. Book signings, things like that, being willing to tell people about your work. That's hard for me in some ways to promote myself, but if you promote yourself as an author, as a person, and people connect with you as a person, then it doesn't matter what you write, they're going to want to read your stuff. And my publicist, Mickey Mickelson, with Creative Edge Publicity, has done a really good job of that. He's awesome. And so when the time comes eventually, if you're able to get a publisher or a publicist, they'll manage, your book signings and different things like this on podcasts and, and that kind of thing. And then, you'll end up with Mr. Weir and, talking about scrolls and all that other mess.
All that important stuff. Yes.
Indeed.
A lot of my guests have come from Mickey. So yes, it's good. And, yeah, I mean, podcasts and stuff like that. And I don't teach. You could decide this for yourself, but you could make required watching of your students that they need to watch this episode of the podcast as well, right? So learn a little more about the teacher, right?
Well, I'm hoping so. To get my book into the school district, it has to be vetted. So they got to look and make sure that it's So even though I tell them there's no cussing, there's no swearing, minimal violence, there's no sex. They don't take my word for it. They have to look through it and whatever. So hopefully they'll vet it. They'll be like, okay, and then I can actually use it as required novel study for my 7th graders. That's my goal. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah.
Okay, well, we're down to the end here, so I'm going to throw up your website here on the screen. And is this the best place for people to get a hold of you?
You can get a hold. Yeah. That and also Facebook, Terrance Niedziela Jr., and I have a Tales of RS page as well in Facebook, and on Instagram at Terrance Niedziela Jr. You can also find me on there, and so those would be the best places. But like if you want to email me, writing advice, different things like that, if definitely you can email me at terrance@terranceniedzielajr.com, and I can respond back and that kind of thing. And yeah.
And you said if they sign up, you do a newsletter,
Yes.
and if you
Yep.
sign up, you do get a free story. You said.
Yep. And in fact, I just sent out for July. I sent out the first chapter of the Saga of Miklos for people to read, and
Yeah.
so there's all sorts of different things that I come up with and I'm doing a contest right now that for through the month of July, that for those that have read the book, if they can send me email me a list of all of the allusions, all the references to famous people and shows and movies or books or different things like that, where it is in the book and what I'm alluding to. Whoever has the longest list and the most accurate list will be, they get the privilege of naming one of the major side characters in this upcoming novel, and be on the acknowledgments page and stuff like that. So for example, I make an allusion to green eggs and ham. Cassandra, the sister, is eating green eggs and pork strips. And I have some Star Wars allusions in there. Of course, there's some biblical stuff in there too, and all sorts of different kinds of nerdy things that for those who are in the know. But you can't use AI.
Easter eggs, so to speak, too, right?
Yeah,
Little hidden
basically,
things
yeah.
you might
They're like
miss.
Easter eggs, very much so. Yes. But I do put on there you can't use AI in order to you can't grab the Kindle and then run it through and be all like, oh hey, here's it. Yeah, like sorry, that doesn't work.
And where are your books? Can you buy your books through your website? Do you, Amazon? Where do you get your books?
I have some links actually on my book launching page on my website, but also Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Thrift Books, Walmart, and it might be on some other major distributors too that I'm not sure about, but I'm definitely on those. And on Amazon, there's a Kindle version and an audiobook version, and the audiobook version is like $4 or $5. It's not even that expensive. So.
Who did the narration for you?
Catherine ran it through AI voice thingamabob.
Yeah.
So she did it that way with the the word voice thing.
All right. Anything else you wanted to cover?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So, thank you for being on the show. We're dealing with unfortunately, it didn't look like the Facebook Live worked, only the YouTube. So, I'll have to post something on my Facebook and tell people, sorry, it didn't work, but you can watch it after the fact on YouTube and stuff. I don't know. Sometimes it actually still shows up on Facebook. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So, I usually haven't had too many problems with the software, but good old technology kind of messes.
Technology works great until it doesn't.
Yeah, well, and I worked in the IT world, so I dealt with that most of my life. I'm retired now, but still got to deal with. My wife works in the office next to me, and anytime she has a problem with her work, she's always Randy. She wants to deal with me because I'm right there instead of trying to go through tech support.
Yep.
Yeah. So. All right, Terrance. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. It was great having you on the show. Hopefully, you stay cool there in South Carolina and dodge all the crazy hurricanes this year. So far, it's been quiet, I think, this year. Right?
Yeah, so far it has. And thank you very much for the privilege of being on your show. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we will talk to you maybe down the road when your next book comes out.
That'd be awesome. I look forward to it.
Okay, take care. All right, thanks everyone. A little technical. I'm going to quickly run up here. I do have my Killing Nashville shirt on. I was nominated for the Silver Falchion Award for Justice for the Forgotten, so I'll be going to Killing Nashville for the awards ceremony in August. It'll be a good time, we hope, there. And unfortunately, we couldn't go for the whole conference this year. We've just been traveling too much and spending too much money and stuff. And then my new audiobook, Sold Souls, is out, narrated by Philip Polite, the third book in the Divine Devil series, which won a couple Silver Falchion Awards as well. So, but I hope you'll check it out. Philip Polite does a great job on that book. It does deal with human trafficking, so it is an intense book. If that's a trigger, don't do it. So, thanks everyone. My next guest won't be till August 3rd. I'm taking next week off because it's my birthday. Yay for me. 67, hard to believe. Maria Galucci will be on, and that'll be August 3rd at 6 p.m. We'll be in a couple weeks, so I hope you'll join us then. Thanks so much, and take care.